I'm hitting the record. I hit the recording right now. Good evening. This is the UISA 9U 10U Informational Zoom meeting for the fall 2021 season. The reason for this meeting is the 9Us and 10Us in regions 1 through 5 are going to be playing no scores, no standings. This is new for the 9Us. This is not new for the 10Us. And then for the SUIRL, this is new for their 9Us. So their 9U coaches were invited to this. The plan today is to basically get everybody up to speed on what we're doing and preferably why. I'm trying to also mute everybody. Cannot tell where that one is coming from. So everybody can check, make sure you're muted. That would be fantastic. Here's the agenda. We're going to start off with the why answer, which will be coming from Skylar Bell. Then talk about certified club linesmen. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. You soon will. How we're going to score the games, which is we're not, but what that actually means. Talking about how realignment will work after the season. And then UISA has a request for information for all of you regarding the President's Cup and the Coyote Cup and how we should run those. So with all that being said, Skylar is going to discuss the why as far as why we are going about doing no scores, no standings in the UISA 9U and 10U. And meanwhile, let's see, somebody who's on there, Tracy, can you see Skylar's picture?
Yes, I had to find myself and unmute myself.
No worries. All right, Skylar, you're on.
All right, fantastic. And my apologies for being in my car. I'm actually coming from, if anybody's familiar with the Positive Coaching Alliance, I'm coming from running a Positive Coaching Alliance meeting for coaches, talking about not exactly what we're talking about tonight, but some similar themes. And Scott kind of asked me to talk about why no scores and no standings at U9 and U10. And part of that reason is because I just spent a decade as the state technical director in a state that had no scores and no standings at this age group. And I was a part of that and was able to see the transition, kind of the befores and afters, especially several years down the road and what the impact was. But I really want to start out with a story more than anything. And that is of a U10 team that I coached in a promotion relegation situation. And really it all started at team formation was really the first impact that I felt. I took 12 kids on my team, which is the highest number you can take at the age group. And I took that many because development's so quick that at the beginning of the year, you never really know where everybody's going to be by the end of the year. And if somebody really plateaus or tanks or ends up saying they don't like soccer, we had numbers there to support that, and we would never have to deal with, oh, we have kids missing because the A team pulled them up, which happened all the time. My parents really wanted an A/B/C roster system because there was promotion and relegation. And so it didn't make sense just to blend everybody in and try to make equal teams. We wanted to have, we put labels on the kids at 9 years old. You're an A team player, you're a B team player, you're a C team player. And I on the B team specifically, kept getting our best 1, 2, 3 players, the same kids every week, kept being pulled up using the club pass, or how we are implementing this is utilizing tournament rosters or pools. But then it was, for me, it was teams, and my 1, 2, 3 best players were basically gone almost every game because they were playing with the A team, because they needed to win as well. And that really frustrated parents because this team that they were excited about and paid for on Saturdays then wasn't that team, and we weren't having those results that they were hoping for. So I heard about that from parents all the time, and I brought up players from the C team to fill in, but to be honest, that made my parents upset too, and I was also somewhat hesitant to do so and give those kids time because they're taking time from the better kids, which often led to worse scores and drops in the standings. But I was lucky enough that I had a couple early developers, and these early developers, they were bigger, faster, and stronger than all the rest of the kids. And so it was great, because we could put them right in the spine of the field. I would put this one specific kid, he's our forward in the first half, and then our center back in the second half to close the game down. And so we got some results because of that. We were able to hide kind of our lower end players at outside back and goalkeeper, and still get kids in the game, even if it wasn't necessarily always meaningful moments or really asking much of them. But when we did have close games, I often felt like I didn't want to sub. I didn't want to put in players, even if they hadn't played a lot that game, but wanted to keep my best players on the field. My anxiety was high because if we didn't have results, positive results, I'd hear about it from the players. I'd hear about it from the parents. The players would hear about it from their parents, and it was hard because my anxiety was high. I was often a jerk to refs when they made a wrong call, or at least what I perceived as a wrong call, because it was going to lead to wins and losses and drops in our standings. And the parents followed suit. They felt the exact same anxiety. And I was not able to really build a team that was ready for the next stage, which is a 15-player roster playing 9v9, and wasn't able to really build a roster, an 18-player roster for a few years later, for 11v11, because those kids, they weren't on the top teams. But when you're playing 7v7 and you have 10 to 12 kids, you ultimately, your second team and maybe your third team are going to end up having players that are very important players when the team gets to 11v11, just because of how the numbers work. And if I'm honest, this is actually not a story of me as a coach, but of my son's coach. But it seemed disingenuous to say that there's a guy I know. But in reality, this really is a story of my son's team. And all of those things came into play when we started thinking about no scores and no standings at this age group. And when we finally implemented it, the biggest piece of feedback I got from any coach was actually how liberating that it was, and how a lot of the issues that parents had, he didn't hear from them anymore, that his anxiety was lower, that the parents' anxiety was lower, that the issue of, oh no, how do I make this decision of team formation, or how do I make a decision for this individual game and playing time, or giving players opportunities to play other positions and really grow into them. A good example is that big kid on his team, as soon as as soon as everybody hit puberty, he was no longer bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else. He was just a player. And because of how he had been played, he didn't develop a lot of the small motor skills, the fine motor skills that other players had to develop, because he could afford a bigger touch and still catch up with the ball and not lose it because of his pace. But the coach never challenged that by putting him in the midfield where there's inherently going to be less time and space. So he never learned those things. So once everybody had caught up physically, he was frustrated that he was no longer scoring goals, that he was only playing center back, and he switched clubs. When that club played him as a center back as well, because they saw the same deficiencies and tendencies, he quit soccer and became a linebacker. And that's a story that I saw firsthand, but also see every day on different fields of how we handle these players who are excellent U9, U10 players, excellent U11, U12 players, but who never really develop further on down the line because of the decisions that we make early to get scores that we want. And that's not to say that the kids don't know the score, because the kids know the score, 100%. Guaranteed, the kids walk off of a 4v4 game knowing what the score was. But once the treats get brought out, once there's fruit roll-ups and Capri Suns, you don't hear a lot about the score anymore. The excitement level goes back up, even if it was a loss. And then you talk about, oh, well, what are you doing later? Can we play? It's the parents, it's the coaches, it's the adults in the room who look up standings. It's not a kid who Googles that or looks it up on UISA's website. It's the adults who have that in their head. And to be honest, that's really who the decision is for, because winning scores are a part of the game and it's part of development. And we're not pushing that aside really at all. But it's us trying to provide an environment where the adults in the room can focus on the learning and the fun, as opposed to how does this decision I'm making, or the decision the ref is making, or the decision another player is making, how does that affect our standings? How does that affect whether we go to P1 or P2 or D2 or whatever? And I will preempt the comment that what changes this then from recreational soccer to when we get here, we call it competitive, we charge competitive prices, we say it's a competitive environment, and then we have no scores, no standings, which creates a recreational environment. And I'll tell you, I understand where that comment is coming from, and we've heard it a lot. It is the environment that the coach creates that really makes it competitive as opposed to recreational. Rec leagues can have scores and standings and maintain being a rec league because they don't travel. Practices are less frequent, maybe once or twice a week. There's less stigma if you have to miss a practice, or if you show up 5 minutes late. There's less of an issue there in a recreational environment. A competitive environment does have a little higher expectations for the accountability of a player. Player forgets his ball, player forgets her shin guards. In a rec environment, that might have one response, and in a competitive one, it might be a little bit different. Hopefully it's not berating or running laps or anything like that. But what we're asking of the players is going to be a little bit different. How we train is going to be a little bit different. The things that we are asking the players to do and the expectations we hold, that's going to be a little bit different. All of those things are really what make it a competitive environment. And that's really up to each individual coach to set that environment and create that culture on their team, where 100%, if you want to say, hey, look, team, we're U10s, but I think we're ready to understand the point that we're up a goal with 5 minutes left. Do we play differently? Do we handle that scoreline different? That's not necessarily a bad thing to even discuss with your team. So we're not saying forget that there is a score at all, just that we're not going to keep it long term, so that coaches and parents are free to enjoy the game and let the players enjoy the game as they learn and grow and develop, as their referees grow and learn and develop, because they're often younger referees who are also new to that. My son was 12 years old when he started refereeing. He had his only skill set to build his refereeing skill set was the fact that he had played soccer, but the two are very, very different. And there's a learning curve there. They often start out at U9, U10 games and learning those, learning there. So building an environment where we as a soccer community get better, that is our goal. Helping individual players get better as opposed to focusing on team results, that's the goal. We want to focus on our player first and really help it be a fun, safe, enjoyable environment that is learning based and competitive while not being focused on that end result. So that's the why. And what I saw in my experience in Idaho was that even the coaches that had the most reticence initially were the ones later coming back and saying, this is freeing. I understand it. I struggled with it at the time. And I don't necessarily think that it's impossible to create this environment with scores and standings, but I get it. I get what it did and I appreciate it. And that's really what we're going for, is to hand the game to you and to your players so that they can fail on their way to success without being labeled, without being stigmatized and so focused on mistakes that they're afraid to try.
Thank you, Skylar. The plan is, as we zip through these things really quickly, we'll have a question and answer session at the end. If you have questions for Skylar, he'll be happy to take them. Also, Skylar, we have made our resident 9U, 10U, no scores, no standings guru. So if you're a coach and you have questions and you're like, am I emphasizing the right things? Give him a call. He's more than happy to talk to you. And yeah, and he's actually fairly pleasant. So one thing you mentioned was already talking about the referees. On your screen, hopefully, and somebody who's still up, so Skylar, I don't know if you can hear me or not. I have popped up the UISA website. So first of all, this is going to help all of you. If you're trying to figure out where the information is on the 9Us and 10Us, here under leagues, state competition leagues. And then unfortunately, it's a bit of a scroll down. Down we go, age specific rule updates under 9U and then 10U. Remember Southern Utah, you guys actually got a different form. Your 9Us are the same, the 10Us are different. Under 9Us, when you hit it, there's a clarification of all the special rules at the 9U level. All the information you need to know. And then where we're going to go and focus now is on the certified club linesman. What a certified club linesman is and what our intent is. UISA is very aware of the referee shortage. And it's a referee shortage, not only of youth referees as far as referees who are younger, but we desperately need older referees. There's a huge difference between an adult yelling at a 16-year-old and an adult yelling at a 40-year-old. The one yelling at the 16-year-old, the 16-year-old is concerned and worried. The 40-year-old is looking at him saying, knock it off or you're going home. And so we would love to see more referees that are a little bit older. And then also for the younger referees that are doing these 9Us and 10U games, we give them support. We give them a team, which is each team. And again, you can click on the certified club linesman right there in the middle. It's the whole screen on the information, tells you what they are and how it works. And there's the video. I don't want to go in depth through all of it. The video, by the way, is 5 minutes and 48 seconds long. It's very short. All a club linesman calls is in and out of bounds, both on sideline and the end line. So they still run between the half line and the end line with the referee running the regular diagonal. It will be shown on the video. They are not calling offside. They are not calling any fouls, but they are there to help. All coaches should have received in the mail 2 CCL vests. You only need to have 1 CCL at each game because each team has one. I will say the teams and clubs that have been most successful with certified club linesmen are those who have said to the parents, yeah, everybody watch the video. Everybody at some time should probably watch the heads up concussion training that's state mandated and the safe sport certificate that is federally mandated, just so you know what they are. Because, you know, frankly, you need to know what steps are being taken for the safety and protection of your children. But for purposes of actually being a CCL, it's just the 5-minute long video that's there in the middle. Everybody, please do it. If your team is having a problem getting anybody to volunteer, you can call the office. We can give you advice, or if we need to send a very kind email to your parents, we're happy to do so. For anybody who has parents who say, aren't we paying for referees? No, you're paying for one referee. At the 9U, 10U level, we only play for the one center referee. The club linesmen are volunteers and are helpful. They are mandatory. Coaches, please help us. If you have a referee say, no, I'm not going to use the certified club linesman, please let us know as soon as you possibly can, because that will be fixed. Okay. Next step, how we know that a game has been played. The scoring, there is still scoring that happens. I've just grabbed a game from last spring, game number. I'm now looking up the form. This is the form that, oh, I knew that was going to happen. This is a form that team managers, well, eventually this could be a form that team managers would get. And now you guys get to find out how difficult it is to get to the right stuff. Okay. Team managers and coaches who have entered scores before this should look vaguely familiar. The scores are entered as 0-0. In this game, the referee, who is Ryan, did a great job of putting down in the comments what the score was. Very helpful in case later on we need to figure out some things, and as far if a club calls and say, how is this team doing? We can look up the scores and look up the games and see what happened. Meanwhile, one of the coaches added in who their CCL is. This is almost perfect. If the other coach had also put in who their CCL was, that would be fantastic. Under comments, 2 things I hope you guys can notice. Under comments, you can put down things like, oh, by the way, the referee did a great job. Or, by the way, this referee maybe needs a little bit of help. That's the place to put it, is there in the comments. That helps us understand what's going on. If something is really problematic, as always, call the office. Okay, 2 other quick comments. We can realign your players after the fall. All of you should know this, in that your teams were aligned, or I like to say your players were aligned, your groups of players were aligned, according to how your coach, you as the coach or your DOC, thought they should be aligned. We're trying to get like players with like players. After the fall, we're going to do it again. So if you're around a good group, if you're in red, green, blue, purple, whatever the division happens to be, and if you fit, that's fantastic. If you don't quite fit, we need to fix it after fall, we're more than happy to do so. And then last but not least, UISA's staff organizes the President's Cup and the Coyote Cup. Both of those currently have score standings because we play through to a champion. We're a little concerned that that's inconsistent with this messaging. So the question for all of you to think about, and you can respond back to the office, you can send us an email, you can any way you want to, you can talk to your DOC, whatever you need to do. What you would think if the President's Cup or Coyote Cup was set up more of a jamboree style. If it's jamboree style, the way we would run it is teams from North, Metro, South, SUIRL, we try to bracket them against teams from other brackets. So you're going to see teams you don't usually play. And we should by that point, because all of that happens during the early spring before spring season begins. By that point, we'll have a pretty good idea of the quality of the teams, and you'll have quality idea of your quality of your team. So with that being said, I'm up for questions. I see a hand raised from Gibbon, so you can jump in. And thank you, everybody. And hopefully the Q&A will help. And you're still.
Let's see if I can unmute this.
You're perfect.
Hi there. Okay, so I'm just curious. It's just the 5-minute video that's required. Is that correct?
Okay.
Because I'm having people giving me a hard time about the 2 or 3 hours that's required.
I agree completely. Okay, so boy, this is being recorded too, and I'm actually an attorney. So how do I say this? I am mandated federally and statewide to say you need to watch the concussion video in the safe sport if you are a volunteer for any of certain sports, etc.
Mm-hmm.
A CCL, I would say barely qualifies. I think it's squishy about that whether or not they even do qualify. Out of an abundance of caution, we would prefer that everybody watch it. We are not having anybody turn in the forms. We are not having team managers turn in the forms. Okay, more than anything else, as many people as possible who can watch the videos and can help out the referees. The idea is we want, at least for one game or maybe for half the game of the season, depending on the person, that person's part of the referee team. And we want them to enjoy seeing and being part of that part of the game. So yes, perfect question. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, wow. Jenny and kids.
Hey, okay. My question is, let's see if I can get this turned up. It's loud. Okay, so you're not doing scores and standings, which I think is awesome. But let's say you feel like you're in a group that's like too intense for your kids. How will you know where to realign them if you don't know like how all the other groups have been doing? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So pretty much even during this first alignment, the directors of coaching and some of the other coaches and the competition subcommittee all had an idea of how we were putting things together. And so, for example, in Region 3, Mauricio frankly said, do you think you have a group of players that are in the top, in the middle, or just beginning? And they kind of told him, and so that's how he aligned them. And then after the fall, again, yeah, you're right. No, we're not keeping scores, but absolutely, if you're on the wrong end of 0-8 every game, right? And so this is like, and that's when you talk to your director of coaching and your coach and say, hey, let's drop a division. Okay, and
Gotcha.
Easily done. And we will absolutely do that. We will make divisions as big as they need to be. There's a couple divisions, I don't know if a couple you saw, that are the same color, but an A and a B. The A and B are exactly the same. The color level is the idea is the same. It's just we can't get them too big because we can't form a schedule. So
Gotcha. Perfect.
no worries. Still looking for questions. Oh, you guys cannot be this simple.
Okay, I have one more question then.
Perfect.
Whose job is it to enter those comments and the scores afterwards? Is that usually the team manager who takes care of that?
Typically, a team manager takes care of it. The referees are supposed to do it as well. Every once in a while, we have the fun of one of the people accidentally puts the score in and the other one's put it in as 0-0, and we have what's called a contested score, and we have to get that fixed. But regardless, the team manager, we'd love to see the name of the certified club linesman in there, because that way we know it happened.
Okay.
So every time you could pop in and put that in. And if you're a day later and the referee hasn't put the 0-0 score in and hasn't put what the actual score was, then you could drop that into the comments. That'd be great.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's go with Kay Paletta.
Sorry, I was struggling with the mute button.
Everybody does.
Yeah, I just have a comment about the President's Cup, because I've noticed this year with the U9 tournaments that it's been the tournaments themselves have had a very wide variety of teams, and it's been really difficult to get quality and like meaningful games. So like the last tournament we were in, they kept score and it was 22-0 through the group stage. And then we get to the championship, and then there's finally like one game. It was 2-1, and it was exciting and meaningful. And then Surf Cup in June, which has normally, in my experience, been, a very like heavy 2-3 bracket U9 tournament, didn't even have a U9 bracket. And so I wonder if there's been a plan as to how to kind of bolster the tournaments in the summer. And then also with the Jamboree idea of President's Cup, I think that, have you guys, because it's something I heard from a different coach, I'm not taking credit for this, but having two different, like a competitive Gopher championship bracket and then more of a Jamboree. Because I know for my teams, if President's Cup is just going to be a Jamboree where we're playing 3 games, I'm probably going to go just to one of the other tournaments in a different state, if that makes sense.
Right. I can tell you it's kicking the tire stage right now. They have not made a determination on how they want to do it. They're very interested in doing so. Typically at the President's Cup level, because it's a UISA tournament, we're usually able to get access. If nothing else, we can get a hold of directors of coaches and coaches directly to say, hey, wait a minute, how good is your team? We're usually able to get good bracketing and usually able to get like teams against like teams in a competitive environment. But it's exactly, please make sure you get those comments to whatever, whoever your director of coaching is, or even send it into UISA, because those are the type of things we need to know. Because like you said, if people aren't interested in the Jamboree, well, then we won't do a Jamboree style. We love President's Cup. We love giving these youngsters, for some of them, it's their first out of town tournament. And we'd love to be able to give them that opportunity. So we want to make sure it's something that's attractive. Steve Beckstrom, go for it.
Thanks, Scott. So I've got a question about the player pool. Down in Southern Utah, we have some kids who are 2013 birth year kids, but play up in the 2012 birth year. Are they part of the club pool for purposes of determining your tournament roster for a game?
For SUIRL, as long as they are of the correct age, yes, they can be tournament rostered onto the 9U team.
Great, thanks. One final comment on President's Cup. I like the idea of doing a competitive tournament just to give the kids a taste of what it's like.
Understood. Tyler.
Can you go over the
pool rostering then, what that looks like on game day if you have multiple teams in an age group, whatever you call them. I don't know what.
Yeah, okay, so this may or may not affect everybody. There are some groups where the pool is large enough so they don't have one team of 9Us. What they have is a group of, let's say, 18 kids. And what will happen is the team manager will use the tournament roster function and be able to form a roster for each of the games. And they just place the kids on them, boom, 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 boom. I don't have the ability to pull that up because I don't have the ability to pull off the schedule and pull a game and be able to pull a tournament roster to show you how that works. If anybody has questions on how that happens, please call into the office. Cindy's fantastic at it. Carly's fantastic at it. Jenny's fantastic at it. I'm not great at it yet, but that's just because I'm learning on that. But we will get that put together. Just remembering, we don't want players playing more than one game a day if we can help it. They can play two. Sometimes that matters because the teams are a little bit light, but certainly nobody's playing three. We don't want any of these kids overworked. Now, here's the blunt, I guess we'll call it admission. Tournament rostering, we can't really track from our side. These aren't club pass players. You are not club passing kids at the 9U, 10U level unless you have a 10U who's club passing up to play 11U. So it's not the club pass system, it's the tournament roster, and you use the tournament roster to create the team. Now, again, that's if you have multiple teams and multiple players. If you just have one team, it's just your regular roster. So it's not a problem. Did that answer your question, Tyler?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else looking for hands?
I didn't raise my hand, but I got another question. What's to stop coaches from like independent or smaller teams to have a pool of like 12, 13, 14, 15 players and then do two teams in two different brackets and use those players on like a double roster? Does that make sense? Like, is there control mechanisms so that as a coach, I couldn't say, all right, I'm going to pick up the best 14 players and I'm going to do U9 blue and U9 white, and I'm going to go out and play the best players in both brackets to try to win everything, to dominate and try to recruit and get the best players. And then all of a sudden, because I've seen it at tournaments this year where coaches have double rostered up to 4 players in a tournament.
Right. So first of all, tournaments, we can't play with much. I mean, the tournament rosters are what they are. As far as for playing in UYSA, the players still have to be at the original rostering, still have to be on a quote unquote team, and the minimum roster size is 9. For not exceptional circumstances, for circumstances where there's groups that are a little bit larger and they had a team of 9 and then another team of 7, which basically said, hey, we've got a group of 16, we'd like to form 2 teams. That was approved, and then the second team was done. But something like what you just said with 14 kids, no, that would not, well, as far as I know, those were not approved that way. We would want them to have more because we want them to have the right type of system.
Okay. And then another question. So is there going to be a mechanism like next year to be able to have a player pool? Because I think that if we look at like me, like I have 2 teams and right now I have 10 and 9 looking to get another one. Is there a way to have just a pool of 20 players that then I can put and register without putting them to a team? Because I appreciate the idea. I see where this is going, but it's a hard sell to parents to say, hey, it's a group of 20 pool players when I also am saying, hey, I got to put you on one team and you on another. I got to put you on this team and you on that team.
We're still working with Affinity to figure out a way that we can do that, where we can set a pool and have it done that way, because the issue would be you're taking the maximum roster size. Yeah, that there's multiple issues. we're working and trying to figure out a way we can make that happen. Right now, within the Affinity system, which is the registration / scheduling software, we don't have a way of just creating a pool. We still have to put them on quote unquote teams. Now, some of that could be in the way that you name the teams. So if you name them in such a way that it doesn't appear that there's any distinction between the two, maybe that'll help. But, and then of course, it's how you use it. If you're truly mixing and matching the kids and using the tournament rostering and switching teams all the time and moving the kids around, maybe that takes care of the problem. But I agree with you, it is not the perfect scenario for a pool. Okay, still looking for hands. And I'm not hearing any, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. People will have questions, ask them. Most of the directors of coaching for most of your clubs have an idea of what exactly is going on and what they want out of their 9U and 10U programs. Skylar was trying to be careful, but I will be even more careful. At the 9U, 10U level, I hate to use the word team at all. It's not about team, it's about players, and it's about development. And if we can focus on that, I think that will get us. And then right there, I got a question. Karen.
Hey, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to raise a hand on this
No worries.
Zoom thing, but I missed on my phone. Is there any plan to, on the system, stop people passing across regions? I know people aren't supposed to do it, but because they're not stopped, I don't think it's stopped the issue to tell them no, not to do it.
So right now we have asked people to not transfer players, not tournament roster kids between regions. For people in smaller regions, you have no idea what we're talking about. But if you're in, and frankly, if you're in North, I don't think people are too worried about people going between 1 and 2. If you're in Metro, nobody's too worried about going between 3 and 4. The concern comes when we have North players playing in Metro or Metro players playing in South. Is that the basic concern, Karen?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I will say, for the most part, the reason that has been done in the past is to get results. Well, yeah, we've eliminated that. So we're very hopeful that that will go away.
Okay, so no plans on the system to stop it though?
We're keeping an eye on it to try to figure out a way if there's a way that we can.
Okay.
And right now it's just like I said on the other affinity issue, trying to tighten that up and try to figure out a way in the program to make it work is the challenge.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Not much else. There was an interesting comment on the chat, if people want to pop on that, which was the other side of the argument on tournaments, which is, hey, if you're going to a tournament and, you know, the question is, why are you going to a tournament? Are you going to a tournament to win, or are you going to a tournament to develop players? And I don't know that there's a wrong answer, but you know, it is something. And as you guys can tell, UISA is taking a stance on what we think is correct, which is, again, at 9 and 10, it's all about development. And seeing nothing else, no other hands in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time. We were going to save this recording. We'll be able to put it up on the website. If you have people who have any questions, you know, absolutely have them go. They can listen to that, or as always, they can call the office. Skylar's the brain trust as far as what his suggestions are, as far as for helping out on coaching side of things. And then if you have questions on the rules, the regulations, league commissioner's office is always there to help. That's me and Cindy. So with nothing else being said, I'm going to end the meeting now. Thanks, everyone.